Welcome to Old West Stories. He tried to rob a lone traveler on a desert trail, thinking it would be an easy score. But when he lifted the veil, he froze, and everything changed. Witness the moment that turned a would-be robber into a man forever changed. Hit subscribe and watch the full story unfold. Let's get started. The dusty trail stretched endlessly under the blazing sun, the horizon shimmering with heat waves. Every rock and thorn seemed to mock the lone rider who pressed onward, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds of dust with each frantic step. He was a man of desperation, his life marked by bad choices and narrow escapes. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the landscape. That was when he spotted it. A slow-moving wagon, unescorted, vulnerable. In his mind, the decision was immediate. This wagon promised valuables, or at least the illusion of them. A grin curled across his sun-beaten face as he adjusted the grip on his whip. He urged his horse forward, the leather straps creaking and the animal straining under the sudden speed. The rider's heart pounded in his chest, a rhythm of excitement mixed with dread. He had robbed before, yes, but something about this moment made him feel as if the air itself was holding its breath. The wagon, simple yet sturdy, rolled steadily across the rugged terrain, its wheels grinding against stones. The driver, partially hidden beneath a thick, dust-stained veil, appeared unaware of the danger approaching, and that ignorance stoked his sense of opportunity like fuel to a fire. Closer now, the rider's mind raced with imagined riches. Coins, jewels, perhaps even gold bars, hidden beneath sacks of goods. His lips curled into a sneer, and he readied himself to leap from his horse, whip raised high, demanding the spoils that he thought would be his. Every instinct in his body screamed confidence, arrogance even. But as his horse galloped, the wind whipping around him, a strange hesitation began to creep in, a whisper that he could not quite hear above the pounding of hooves. Something about the figure in the wagon made his chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. He slammed his hand against the wagon door, yanking open the veil with a force born of impatience and greed. What he saw made him freeze entirely, as if time itself had stopped. The woman sitting inside was nothing like he had imagined. Her presence commanded the space around her, calm yet resolute. Her eyes were sharp and knowing, burning with an intelligence that seemed to pierce straight into his very soul. She held herself with a poise he had never encountered, a quiet dignity that made his bravado falter. Suddenly, the carefully rehearsed words he had prepared for intimidation disappeared from his mind. The desert sun glinted off the fine dust that clung to her clothing, highlighting the subtle elegance of her posture. She didn't flinch. She didn't even glance away. Instead, her gaze locked onto his, unyielding and unafraid. The confidence she exuded was unnatural, almost regal, and it caused a shiver to run down his spine. For the first time he felt truly seen, not as a man with a whip or a reputation for cunning, but as something much smaller, inconsequential even. His heart thudded, not from adrenaline, but from a strange, unsettling fear that rooted him to the spot. His mind raced, trying to rationalize what he was feeling. Fear, respect, awe, all collided in a chaotic storm of emotion. He had robbed travelers before, men and women alike, but never had anyone looked at him in such a way. The calm in her demeanor was disarming, a silent power that spoke louder than any weapon. It became clear to him in that instant that the consequences of underestimating her could be severe. He could attack, perhaps overpower her for a moment, but the certainty in her eyes suggested that the outcome would not favor him. For a moment he simply stared, trapped between desire and caution. The world seemed to contract, the noise of the desert fading into an almost sacred silence. The horse shifted beneath him, sensing his hesitation, but he barely noticed. His hands loosened on the reins as the whip lowered slightly, as if some invisible force were guiding him toward the impossible. Restraint. He realized that this was no ordinary traveler. This woman carried something within her that was far more valuable than any tangible treasure, an aura of strength and a presence that demanded reverence. As seconds stretched into eternity, he felt a wave of clarity sweep over him. The robbery that had seemed so certain now felt reckless, foolish, even dangerous. The thought of confronting her, of trying to take anything from her, seemed absurd. A profound change stirred within him, one he could not ignore. He wanted to flee, to retreat into the safety of distance, but the pull of curiosity and respect anchored him in place. The desert sun bore down, but he barely felt the heat. His mind was entirely consumed by the woman's unwavering gaze, the fire within her eyes, and the undeniable fact that he had met someone extraordinary. The desert air hung heavy with tension as the man stood frozen, the whip slipping from his trembling fingers. Every muscle in his body screamed for action, fight, flee, demand, but none of it mattered. The woman's eyes held him captive, unwavering, unflinching, and impossibly calm. It was as if she could see not only his intentions, but also the secrets he had buried deep inside. Words failed him. His throat felt parched, as if speaking aloud would shatter the fragile thread, keeping his courage intact. For the first time in his life, he realized that intimidation meant nothing here. He could feel a strange heat rising in his chest, not anger or desire, but a creeping awareness that he was being measured, weighed, and found lacking. Her presence demanded more than compliance. It demanded respect, every instinct he had relied upon for. Survival was now conflicted, confused. The greed that had driven him to this encounter moments ago now seemed petty, almost absurd. In the glare of her eyes, the desert sun seemed to pale. The harsh wind softened, and the world itself narrowed, until the only thing that existed was the quiet, commanding presence of this extraordinary woman. The horse shifted nervously beneath him, sensing the tension in its rider, but he barely noticed. His hands, once tight around the reins and whip, loosened involuntarily. He felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him, the mistakes that had led him to this dusty trail, to this confrontation. Panic was replaced with awe, fear with reverence. The idea of attacking her, of taking anything from her, seemed not just foolish but dangerous in a way he could not define. For the first time, he felt small, fragile, and entirely exposed before someone who required nothing of him. He swallowed hard, the dust in his throat scratching painfully, but his lips could barely form words. I'm sorry, he managed to whisper, a fragile confession that felt both freeing and humiliating. The words hung in the air, carrying a weight far heavier than any treasure he might have stolen. The woman's expression softened slightly, just enough to acknowledge his honesty, but not so much that it diminished the gravity of the moment. There was no anger, no judgment, only recognition, and it struck him like a lightning bolt, igniting something deep inside him that he hadn't known existed. The silence stretched on, thick and almost sacred. He felt the burn of shame and the warmth of newfound respect battling within him. She did not smile mockingly, nor did she offer forgiveness outright. Instead, she simply guided her wagon forward, her movements fluid and composed, like a leader moving through her territory. He watched, mesmerized, as her figure became the axis around which the world seemed to revolve. Every detail, the sway of the wagon, the dust clinging to her cloak, the quiet authority in her posture, etched itself into his memory, leaving him forever altered by a single encounter. Step by step she created distance between them, yet he could not tear his eyes away. The man felt a peculiar combination of relief and longing as she disappeared slowly down the trail. Relief, because the immediate danger was gone. Longing, because in those brief moments he had glimpsed something pure and extraordinary, something far beyond the shallow life of crime he had known. The desert seemed emptier now, but not desolate. There was a strange sense of possibility in the air, a promise that some encounters could change a man's life in ways he had never imagined. For a long moment, he remained motionless, the whip dangling uselessly by his side, the horse shifting impatiently beneath him. His mind replayed the encounter over and over, the quiet fire in her eyes, the calm strength of her voice, even though she had spoken nothing. Subtle tilt of her head, as if acknowledging his surrender. Every detail etched itself into his consciousness, reshaping his understanding of courage, power, and respect. He realized that life was bigger than he had thought, that there were forces beyond greed and fear that could influence a man's path forever. Finally, with a deep, shuddering breath, he lifted his gaze toward the horizon, now empty of the wagon and its remarkable driver. He felt smaller, yes, but in that smallness he discovered a strange clarity. The world seemed larger, fuller, more real than before. He had come seeking to take something from someone else, but in the end he had received far more than he could ever have imagined. Humility, awe, and a lesson about the strength of character he had never possessed. The desert whispered around him, carrying the echo of a single moment that would shape the rest of his days. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the man finally turned his horse and rode slowly away, forever changed. The memory of her unwavering gaze, the quiet dignity in her silence, and the power of restraint would remain with him, haunting and guiding him in equal measure. The desert was vast and full of dangers, but now he faced it differently. He had encountered a force that no weapon could match, a presence that commanded respect, and in that encounter he had learned that true strength often lay not in taking, but in knowing when to let go.